afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. We have with us a very special guest and someone who I always love talking to, Buck Sexton, host of the Buck Sexton Show. Good conservative American. And for the first time in your welcome history, we have the guest not wearing headphones.
Do I have to explain why?
Oh, yes. Or I can.
So I have a very large head. I have an oversized cranium. This is a real thing. In fact, when I was a baby, the doctors had to have my mother bring me in, true story, to tape measure my head for the first 3 months of my life on this earth to make sure that it didn't go beyond normal, because then they would be worried about fluid retention around the brain. So my head is so big that I had to get a special helmet when I deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. Like I had to get the XL helmet, like I had to find one, and I cannot wear headphones because it actually gives me a headache. So I do radio with an earpiece like a TV guy. I cannot wear headphones.
So
I know people, you know what people love to do? They love to say, why don't you ever wear, oh, this hat will fit you. I've played this game 1,000 times in my life. They'll come up to me with a baseball hat, and then we get to do this thing where they try to, yoink it down over my head. It will not fit. And it's not just hair.
Okay.
So there you go.
So you've just gotten me completely enraged because I hate it when people have no empathy. So if their favorite food is, let's suppose, sushi, right? And you don't like just pieces of meat. And they insist to you, if you try it, you'll like it. And it's like, I'm coming at this from an informed place. And then when you try it and you don't like it, oh, you're not open-minded. You have a lifetime of knowledge about your head.
Correct.
This person has had 5 seconds to think about it, but they know better than you about your giant freak head.
Yeah, this is also why I played basketball, soccer, and tennis growing up.
Special Olympics?
Not because, see, you're going to make jokes like that I just have to skip past because I am corporate friendly.
Because you don't understand them. Because if you're a giant freak head.
But
Did they call you
I
Easter
couldn't
Island?
what I'm trying to say is I couldn't play the helmet sports, which is obviously, if you want to get the girls, you play the helmet sports usually. You got to play football, you got to play lacrosse, at least in the Northeast. Like the rest of the country laughs at lacrosse. But I couldn't play them because the helmet. I played ice hockey for 1 season. I was getting headaches all the time.
Could you wrestle with the headgear?
I'm sorry?
Wrestling. They have the headgear. Can you do that?
I didn't wear headgear when I wrestled. I just crushed fools.
Oh.
I was actually really good at wrestling.
Did you just
I wrestled growing up.
Wait,
yeah.
Did you headbutt them and put them in comas?
I mean, my ultimate weapon is in fact the headbutt. I don't know if you're familiar with a video game on TurboGrafx-16. You remember that system?
Of course I do.
I mean, I had it.
It had that serial killer was the main game.
Well, there was a game called Bonk's Adventure, and it was actually a caveman with a giant round skull that hit things with its head, and people made fun of me.
So this is going to sound on PC, and it's really not. There's that African tribe where the women have those rings around their neck. And every so often they add another ring and they artificially extend their necks. And this is supposed to be a sign of beauty. However, what people don't realize is if those women were to ever remove those rings, they would either die or it would be extremely dangerous because they don't have the muscle support to build up their heads. So now I'm imagining you as a toddler with your head all the way sideways because your neck couldn't
You're
support
laughing,
it.
but if my mom was here, she would tell you that people would watch me and my head would go like this and then I'd fall down.
Oh my God.
I mean, the rest of my body kind of grew into it a little bit more as I got older, but like the head was enormous.
Wait, so-
my dad claims that when he saw it during the whole like my entry into the world, that he almost passed out just because the head was so big. It's true.
Did he suspect that your mother had an affair with a bowling ball?
No, he has a big head too.
Oh.
Like he knew that this was from his side of the gene pool, but he didn't realize that if you
know-
if you mixed these two together, you'd get like Bonk's Adventure, which is what I was.
You know how when you teach kids to swim, one way to do it is just throw them in the deep end of the pool?
Yeah.
I imagine them doing it with you, but you just hit the bottom like completely straight down.
Yeah, it was a challenge to be sure.
Wait, so are baby pictures of you adorable or are they disturbing?
So I had a little. I can't believe we're still talking about this. There's a lot of. I wish
it's a
I had
gift.
some.
It's a gift.
There are baby pictures of me that I could show you where I have on. I mean, and I'm not trying to be un-PC. It looks like I'm wearing a yarmulke. I mean, I'm a Catholic. It looks like I'm wearing a yarmulke. It's actually a child's like baseball hat on my head that is just really, really small because they're trying to balance out for photos. So they had like this little tilted hat on my head and kind of the back, but it was just small because my head was so big.
So one of the things that I've watched happening with when I wrote my book, The New Right, I had completely written off conservatives. And that, of all the things in my book that I was wrongest about or have changed my opinion about the most, that is the thing I've changed my opinion about the most. And it's from people like you, Molly Hemingway and Sean Davis at The Federalist, Ben Domenech. So many conservatives I have found have become woke to the nature of what they're up against.
Yeah, we're at war.
Yeah. And it took a long time, I think, for conservatives to appreciate, because conservatives are like, we're all Americans, blah, 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 to realize, these people want me dead.
Yeah, I mean, look, I can tell you that the Kavanaugh moment was, I have had two very specific memories that changed my perception of what we were facing. One was 9/11, which then led me to the CIA, and we can talk about that and why I left. If you want. But 9/11 as a New Yorker, all of a sudden you realize, like, oh, there are people that really will just drive planes into buildings full of whomever and just kill as many people as possible and think that this is some, they have a coherent political philosophy
and want to
behind
kill
this.
as many people. That's
right?
the goal.
No, that's the purpose is to just kill as many,
Yeah.
Muslims, Christians, Hindus, Jews, everybody. Just kill as many people, men, women, children. That was a moment of revelation. I actually feel that the Kavanaugh situation, watching that on TV and seeing the way that liberals approach that. I mean, I have lost friends over very few political issues. I mean, I cannot respect somebody at this point if their position is that Kavanaugh is a gang rapist. And I've met women who were friends of mine who believe this. I mean, that's how effective and underhanded the propaganda against him was.
And well,
a gang rapist, by the way. Not just that he grabbed that woman, who was also crazy and lying, but I mean the Swetnick allegations, that there were these.
What was amazing about the Swetnick allegations is I think she even just said that he was there while she was being gang raped.
Well, at one point she claimed that he put roofies in the punch, if you remember, and then she stepped away from that because it was kind of specific.
Sure.
And she had no backup for when, where, how.
But even in that case, according to her, he's not even engaging in violence or sex against her. And yet the implication, and very quickly it becomes, that he was a participant in this gang rape. So even she doesn't make that accusation per se, although this is really splitting stupid hairs. But that is and the other thing, how they work.
But it was translated, you're saying, by the left into he was a gang rape. Yeah.
Because everyone plays telephone. You hear something and then it gets translated to something else in our minds. And I think very often this is by design. And very often it's because people are dumb and this is just how things become ossified. But it doesn't help when things, for example, people will tell you to this day, because they've been trained to tell you this, that Bill Clinton was impeached over a blowjob and having an affair. And they will believe this.
Correct.
And he committed a felony. And you might say this felony doesn't warrant him being impeached or removed from office, which is an easy argument to make. But it has nothing to do. It's like saying, you drunk driver runs over, kills a kid. He got arrested for having the wrong drink at dinner. It's like, no.
This is, I actually, on Twitter, I remember got into it with Jake Tapper on this issue, who's one of the nastiest people in media and actually one of the biggest frauds for your listeners. So, these people whom I know and used to work with at CNN, they know generally to avoid me now because I don't disagree with them. I mean, I disdain them as human beings. They're actually bad people. But he was part of Scooter Libby was indicted for outing for leaking the name of a CIA officer. They say this. That is false. That is not what happened. That is not why he was indicted. That is not. They knew the initial leak came from Armitage. But by the way, if you present this to people, they will look at you like you are crazy. And you can actually, I've had this experience before, including with somebody who worked for the government, and you can show them on your phone, no, he was indicted for lying under oath about a conversation that could have involved the name, but he didn't leak the name was already going to be published because Armitage had said it publicly, Valerie Plame. But by the way, it was at a desk, and I mean, I did the same stuff that she was doing in terms of sitting around writing memos and filing paperwork and all this other crap.
How big was her head?
Not as big as mine.
Well, that's
not
that
much I can tell you for you want to talk huge heads, people that I've seen. Jerry Seinfeld's head, I swear to God, you could kick open, well, I guess headbutt open a steel fire door with that
you know
thing.
who's got a bigger
huge.
head than you?
Who?
Gingrich.
He's got a big head.
Because he has no neck, so he looks like Mayor McCheese.
Yeah. I mean, Keith Olbermann has a big head, but he also
He's a big dude, isn't he?
He's kind of like, but he has sort of the body of like an aging 75-year-old obese woman. Like he's just kind of big everywhere. He's not really somebody who.
Oh.
Yeah. He's kind of like large and hunched over and, the whole thing. So, yeah. It's not sexy.
So if you could make one prediction for 2020, what would it be?
Donald Trump wins re-election.
Michael Malice here. Want to tell you guys about one of our favorite sponsors, Heshi Socks, HESHI Socks.com. I would like to say I'm wearing them now, but I'm not because I'm recording this naked-ish. If you go to heshysocks.com and use promo code WELCOME30, you get 30% off your entire order. I have a drawer full of socks, and my Heshys are my favorite because they last. They don't wear out in the heel. They've got the fancy ones, kind of fun. They've got the ones for the office. It's got made from this high-end Pima cotton, which is extremely breathable in the warm weather, but it also keeps your feet warm in the cold weather. I don't understand how they do it. I just like them. If you go to heshisocks.com, promo code WELCOME30, you get 30% off. Ankle socks, basic socks. A lot of you are basic. This should really speak to you. If you go in the gym, chilling on the couch, going on a date, Heshi socks are the ones you want. And yes, I do wear them proudly when I'm wearing clothes. Let's get back to the show. Here's a question. This is curious. If you could go back to pre-Kavanaugh Buck, what could you have told him to persuade him that he's being naive, if anything?
Buck or me? Go back to myself. Well, see, there's one other. I want to answer your question.
Please.
There's one preface this I want to say, which is that I got to on 9/11. There were actually two revelations.
Okay,
right? There's the jihadists are. Yeah. It doesn't matter if I'm somebody, how woke I am, how much I was somebody. I was studying Arabic before 9/11. I mean, I was somebody very interested in that part of the world. It's how I got in the CIA.
The first people they kill are moderate Muslims. They're the first.
The first, right? The moderate Muslims are the ones that get at the worst.
And that's moderate by our definition. A lot of these so-called moderate Muslims will still be extreme by our definition.
That's also correct, right? But the part of it that was even in some ways more insidious was, and this happened on the day of 9/11, I remember we had our only all-school meeting, and we got together, and the professors who had assembled on 9/11, I mean, people are finding out in real time, like, your dad's not coming home. Like, your sister's not, my friend of mine lost her sister in the tower. She had just found out an hour or two before the meeting. And we found out my uncle was late to work that day. Otherwise, I mean, he would work for Aon. Everybody he knew, his secretary, his partners, everybody got killed. Professor stood up and were like, this is what happens when you have an arrogant foreign policy. This is what happens when you make, this is in front of the whole school, when you make, these are our international relations professors. These are supposed to be the sage, this is supposed to be the wisdom accumulated through decades of tenure and research. And I realized on that day, okay, there are people on the left, and not the fringe of the left. There are people within the establishment of the left who actually do want to tear this whole thing down. They actually do want America to be brought to its knees. They'd prefer that other countries had effectively sovereignty over us or dominion over us, that we shouldn't be the most powerful nation in the world, that we have a lot to atone for, that we're racist and colonial, all this stuff. Usually you think in that moment, everybody would line up together and say, okay, we have an existential threat against us, external threat against us. We are going to have to, put aside our differences. There were leftists who were, nah, sorry, we're not on your team, even when these guys are blowing up buildings full of everybody with planes running into them. Fast forward to Kavanaugh, just your point about Kavanaugh. I had approached politics up to that point with the belief that people who are in public life and who try to present themselves as being of good faith would see something that was so manifestly, partisan is an understatement, but just so manifestly political, not based in evidence, unfair, wrong. And to watch this guy, I called it a ritualized torture session. I'm actually really proud. I did shows at the time, like 3 days into, I did the title of one of my shows on the Buck Sexton Show was Blasey Ford is lying, and then subtext, or she's crazy. But either way, it's not accurate what she's saying. What you realized was that the people in the media and the Democratic establishment that you would think, okay, maybe we disagree on like the tax rate, but at the end of the day, I know that like if my child was missing, I don't have kids, that I could go to you, knock on your door, and you'd help me out. And you realize on that day with Kavanaugh, it's like, no, I think you're on your own with that missing kid. Good luck. That was a revelation. Yeah. That was a moment of, okay, you will watch this happen in this way. And not only not care, cheer for this. To me, it was the televised political version of burning somebody at the stake. To take somebody like this in front of the entire country with 30 million people, whatever it was watching, it was something like that, 30 million people.
Can I make one little correction?
Of course.
Trying to burn someone at the stake. Because they didn't win.
That's true.
And that's a really big deal.
It is a big deal. That's right.
And I tweeted this out not that long ago, and I'm 100% sure you'd agree that the healthiest thing for the right to do, if we're going to talk about, defining borders of what's acceptable thought, is look at all those right-wingers who said Kavanaugh should step down and purge those people. Because those are, I think, by far the most dangerous and insidious people in right-wing thought.
Yeah, they're a fifth column within conservatism. And by the way, what you've seen is the people always talk about all the realignments that are going on the right. And I know you just wrote a book about some of the more extreme elements on the right. But I'm talking about even in the mainstream right. What you see are people who are transparently shifting what they say, what they believe, who they support, based on where their paycheck is coming from. I mean, you see the financial incentive that is pushing people to repudiate what they have pretended to believe for 30 or 40 years in some cases. I mean, someone like Max Boot, Tom Nichols. I used to occasionally have Tom Nichols on my radio show. The guy's the biggest blowhard jackass on Twitter right now.
You don't think his blowhardness is sincere?
No.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
He seems like
this is always tough.
I'm a pompous ass, but I really am a pompous ass. He seems Max. Here's why it takes a lot for me to call someone a liar. I don't think, because the human mind is really good at convincing itself it's doing the right thing. Right? We see this all the time. And if you were a spook, I'm sure you were kind of aware of all these mental games people play with themselves. When Max Boot says that, I recently learned Goldwater was an extremist, where if you know anything about Goldwater, it's his quote, "Extremism in defense of liberty is no vice." That's disingenuous. You're lying. You can't be a historian or educated about the history of conservatism, not know that about Goldwater. It's
right.
Not possible. Jennifer Rubin is as another example.
Isn't she amazing though?
But I think there's a sincerity in the sense that she's just saying what needs to be said to kind of get her attention. You know what I mean? So it's not really the same thing.
She is a performance artist, I think. I mean, she's not so stupid that she doesn't realize that no conservative thinks she's conservative.
I think she might be that crazy.
You do?
I mean, have you ever seen her affect? It's very off to me. But this is armchair quarterbacking,
But, there are also people...
I think what I'm saying is, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
I
think Max Boot is a degree worse than Jennifer Rubin is my point.
I think that's fair because there's the pretending to not have knowledge that one would have had to acquire and utilize over the course of a career. I just think, and I look at someone like Jennifer Rubin, and I mean, she serves a purpose, right? I mean, she serves a purpose at the Washington Post. It's a similar purpose that what's his name, Brett Stevens, right?
The bedbug.
Well, at the New York Times now, formerly at the Wall Street Journal. One of the great moments of bend the knee to make yourself seem more appealing to the other side. And by the way, I mean, you look at the Kavanaugh effect, and once you understand that dynamic of like they will watch your innocent father tortured on TV to try to ruin and destroy him, and like think about this: what's the rest of his life like? To your point, and it's a good one that it didn't work, but what's the rest of his life like if it had worked? Now he's the rapist that can't go near your children. I mean, this is completely insane, right?
One of the sickest things, which I found, and this kind of fell between the cracks, was when they were saying, "Would you want
Kavanaugh coaching your daughter's team?
Daughter's soccer team?"
As if he's a pedophile.
And it's also this little insane implication. It's like for to take something that could not be more wholesome, right? Yeah. Kids, sports, competition, cheering them on, being a supportive figure, to take that and listen, I am a hardcore fan of drag, right? But like that's the enemy and Drag Queen Story Hour is the good thing. It's like there's something seriously disingenuous with what you're putting over.
But I like the Stevens case. Brett Stevens, the Wall Street Journal.
But he believes his own bullshit. I know this.
Oh no, I mean he's incredibly smug. I mean there is this class of conservative elites who have managed to cobble together a certain kind of resume and certain institutions behind them, and we're supposed to believe they're so. I mean, David Brooks is just not a very good writer, not a very smart guy. I mean, there are a lot of people. Tom Friedman is just not a very good writer, not a very smart guy. You go down the list of these people who have been, and don't even get me started on the Dan Rathers and the who's the guy who said he was in Iraq and what's his name?
Who's
making it up? Yeah.
It's in my book. I forgot.
You know what I'm talking about. That guy, not Brokaw, but I mean all these guys, they're frauds. I mean they're absolute frauds. They're actors.
Robin, wait, his daughter's someone.
I mean I can't believe I'm like no, not Peter Jennings. It's a different guy. The other guy who looks like Peter Jennings kind of. But anyway, everyone who's watching this is like, you guys are morons. How can you not know his name? But The point is, someone like Brett Stevens, when you
No, everyone's watching this is like, who's this freak with the giant head?
can they zoom in a little bit? Get it from the
Let's
side.
not. Are we going to break the computer?
It could happen.
We're going to need a bigger
Whoa,
monitor.
They got it.
Christ.
They circle in. Woo, woo. That's why I got to have a lot of hair. So it kind of, the visual effect of it isn't so bad. So, so I just want to finish this point about Stevens, though. Stevens went to the New York Times, and of course they freak out. And there's a reason for this, by the way. That's not. And Kevin Williams had dealt with this at the Atlantic, and he understands this, and we can get to that if you want in a second. But Stevenson showed up, and he's like, you know what? I've really thought more about this or that, and he tries to write these editorials that will push a little bit, but maybe it'll be. He wrote some kind of like climate change thing that was a little bit not what the left would want, and they want to lop his head off. I mean, they just want blood. Like there is no I'm the conservative who can go to these institutions now and actually hold the line and keep it real. They want you to sit there and just be essentially punched in the face and humiliated all the time for their amusement. I told a friend of mine who worked at CNN, I mean, I left CNN of my own accord. They asked me to stay for a third year, much to there's a whole backstory that's not interesting to anybody watching. But I left because I was like, I understand what's going on here. And people say, oh, but go in there and bring. No, you can't. When an ancher is running the show, if they
It's
don't
also
let you
disrespectful.
Talk, it's
if I'm on
wildly
your show, I'm not
disrespectful.
going to call you out and make you out to be
Of course.
an ass.
Yeah. I was smarter than everybody that I'm not that I'm so smart, but everyone I'm doing these panels with at CNN, these people, Anna Navarro and Van Jones. I'm actually not somebody who lies about it or who overstates this stuff and makes stuff up. I mean, Van Jones is actually a pretty adept debater.
Do you know why Van Jones is so smart?
And you can have a real conversation with him. Anna Navarro is a moron. I mean, she's a moron.
Do you know why Van Jones is so good?
Why?
Because he used to be a commie.
Interesting.
He was a former communist, and the commies understand the left. Because they understand Hillary. The commies hate Hillary Clinton more than conservatives do.
Yeah, I like smart people. I mean, I even talking about,
Is Anna really dumb? I was hoping she was just a fraud.
She might be the dumbest person on TV. I think that's a
Holy
real possibility.
shit.
Maybe the dumbest person on television. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, CNN has more than its fair share. I mean,
Did you hear about her upcoming movie role?
You're kidding me.
No, she's going to be playing in a biopic William Howard Taft. But she's got to lose 200 pounds.
Oh, see, I can't make these jokes.
What jokes? It was in Variety.
Oh my God.
It was in everywhere.
You're out of your mind. But
You got to find a bathtub big enough for her to get stuck in.
There are people on the left who I think are wrong on everything, but the synapses fire fast enough and they have enough knowledge and it's interesting to engage with them. And they actually sometimes want to engage, almost like the way that, warring martial arts schools in Hong Kong, like the Sifu wanted to test his skills against the other Sifu. There are people who are real about this. There are people who are real about journalism ethics at some level. I mean, I think Glenn Greenwald, Matt Taibbi, these are guys who I think they agree with me on less than 10% of issues overall. But they're like, if you still think Carter Page is a traitor, you're just crazy. Like now you're just making stuff up. I mean, the FBI falsified evidence against this guy. You still think that he somehow is, these are just matters of fact. But the leftists, I mean, somebody, and I might not even pronounce his name correctly, but it is interesting. I mean, I'll read Ta-Nehisi Coates. Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Yeah.
I think he's absolutely wrong about everything, but he does write it in such a way where I'm like, okay, at least I'm getting a good version of wrong or an eloquent version of wrong. And I can appreciate that.
Thought-provoking.
CNN, MSNBC, and a lot of the other, main sort of establishment flagship journalism enterprises out there now, they've just become echo chambers of left-wing stupidity now. They don't even, the smart people can't even get on air now. Now they just put the people that are just red meat, do Jeff Zucker's bidding, do whoever runs MSNBC.
You don't think CNN is orders of magnitude worse than CNN is
Yes.
worse than MSNBC?
Oh, absolutely it is. I mean, that's CNN is worse because CNN still with. I mean, I've put this challenge out there. Give me one anchor, I'll go on their show. We'll debate. And Charles Cook, I gave him credit, just wrote a piece in National Review a little while back, saying CNN is not a news network. CNN is not a news network. I mean,
No, it's a propaganda network.
It's a propaganda network. I mean, you have
Which is fine, if that's what you want to be.
Look, MSNBC is left. Fox News is right. There's an honesty in that. And you know what you're getting. Now, that doesn't mean that their facts are all made up and people say stuff like, oh, Fox doesn't present facts. No, it just has a different editorial line overall. MSNBC, the same thing. No one thinks Rachel Maddow is not a Democrat, and so I can handle that. But there are people who are like, oh, no, Anderson Cooper's not. He's not giving an opinion show. I'm just like, if you think that, I don't. But this, we had this on my show. I thought a lot more about it. So you still think that the people who believe that Anderson Cooper isn't partisan, that they really believe it, not that they go along with the pretense because they just want to watch him punch conservatives all day?
Hey guys, let me tell you about Sheath Underwear. If you go to sheathunderwear.com and use promo code Malice, you get 30% off. Let me explain what they have. They've got traditional boxer briefs, but they're made with this multi-directional fabric which sculpts precisely the body. It's cool, it's stretchy, it's breathable, and very comfortable. You know what else they have? I was really skeptical. They have these boxer briefs with a dual pouch for both your upstairs and your downstairs, and it keeps everything separated. And when they came into the office, I'm like, what is this? And now I'm like, oh, I get it. It's really fun, and it's really great for athletes and people who engage in intense physical activity. But even if you don't, there's something really fun about wearing them, and I don't know what it is. And frankly, I don't want to know. I just enjoy it. If you go to sheathunderwear.com and use promo code Malice, you get 30% off. SHEATH underwear. They've also got a bunch of cool t-shirts that I wear, which are great for the gym. They're kind of stretchy. So check them out. Let's get back to the show. I have done a lot of reading based on things like Jonathan Haidt and Gustave Le Bon, who's like an old, I
know Gustave Le Bon. Yeah, the crowd, the mob, all that good stuff.
So, and like Dale Carnegie and the Organization Man. I think we profoundly underestimate the ability of the human mind to play tricks on itself. And a good example is this. Today, this happens all the time with, I'm sure, a lot of people in your audience. I'm not trying to insult them. This insistence that Hitler was a left-winger because right-wing is good, Hitler's bad, Hitler's a left-winger. And their definition of left-wing means government, and right-wing means less government. So when I asked them, well, where would you put Emma Goldman and these other anarcho-communists who were against all government but were communists, their heads explode, or they say they're right-wing. You're going to tell me Emma Goldman's right-wing? I don't know what to tell you. So people are...
they were fighting over the same converts. I mean, and there's some interesting backstory on... I mean, if you go back to the origins of some of what we think of as which I know you've spent a lot of time reading and studying up on, but you look at some of the original socialist... you can't say National Socialism now, even though it would actually be a good description of a lot of different programs. You can't say National Socialism without everyone thinking that Hitler, it's Nazis and Hitler and everything. Yeah. But people go back to even the unification of Germany under Bismarck. What did Bismarck do? He goes, okay, these socialists have some interesting ideas.
Right. Oh yeah,
let's just steal some of those ideas for our side, and we'll beat them. And that was actually how we got some of the earliest pension programs and. The Japanese did interesting things too, going all over the world after the Meiji Restoration and saying like, okay, we like the British Navy, we like I think it was the French school system they liked, or it was the German school system, I can't remember, but they kind of picked and chose as it went through. But these are all different nationalized programs that they kind of did a shopping cart of, and so it's not as easy as left and right.
Correct. But I mean, I read this book called The Philosophy of Fascism from 1936. So Mussolini, and I talk about this in my book, is to me a far more interesting figure than Hitler, because even though he's been historically now disparaged because of his later associations, at the time, he was regarded as the guy who squared the circle, because we couldn't have Bolshevism. And obviously, in air quotes, during the Great Depression, capitalism doesn't work. What are we going to do? And he's like, look, I have the third way. It's the best of both worlds. And fascism prided itself on its incoherence. It talked about the will to power. So when people hate hearing this, when Barack Obama is saying, yes, we can, this is a fascist idea, because they're like, okay, what is the government going to look like, Mussolini? We'll figure it out once the nation gets together. They did not have this coherent ideology like the Marxists did or some of the classical liberals did.
Well, this is one of the best insights from Alinsky, actually, which is you just mobilize people.
Oh, yeah.
Just get them mobilized. Once you get them mobilized about, safer schools, then you get them mobilized for pollution next. And then after pollution, it's, whatever other state project, collectivism, whatever, because once people are engaged in that way and can feel their own power in the mob, then the mob is this tool you can wield. But by the way, that's kind of like what the Democratic Party does. Both parties do it at some level, but I think the Democrats are much worse.
Or they're much better.
That's true.
What could Buck have told Buck from 2017 to wake him up?
there isn't that the other side has as part of, you get into the roots of why people really believe government should be either much more involved. And you're interesting. I like that you'll push on saying going the speed limit, conservatism is progressive, going the speed limit. Because there are also arguments that, there are different state projects. I mean, socialism in some ways influences a lot of things. I mean, the notion of the collective, the common good. I mean, we have, to promote the general welfare. I mean, these are things that actually exist even in, the origins of our own polity. But I mean, I think that there are people on the left who, as part of, and I do think it's cyclical. I think that there are some times where this is more or less, in retreat, it just goes through. But I think we've reached the point now where they are scorched earth. I mean, so some of the basic, I can't find better ways of saying it than good faith, bad faith, but they're willing to dispense with all rules. They're willing to dispense with all institutions. They're willing to say they're saving institutions while they're pulling them down, which is one of the defining
the electoral college
characteristics. Yeah, of course.
We have to destroy the electoral college to save the Constitution.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is one of the defining characteristics of the anti-Trump Democratic Party today. But I also think that there has been a replacement of not just, conservatives are all about individual rights, but there's also the sense of, the role of the individual in your day-to-day life, being a good person, be a moral person. And that's actually more important. Like and this, I know this is going to sound trite to people, but people are jerks. How you act as a human being every day is so much more important than who you vote for and anything else. Progressives, I find, and this is my assessment, I'm right, but people can disagree with me, have largely abandoned that in favor of if I support the right people and I support the right programs, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter who I have to destroy as an individual. I don't feel bad for people whose career this ties into wokeness. This ties into everything.
I'm going to agree with you and say one of the things that enrages me and I very much fight against is cynicism. And the idea that if someone is doing something good, you should genuinely doing something good. I don't mean like a Facebook update. I mean, I volunteer at old folks' home. I'm fostering a kid. Terry Shepard, who's an amazing...
He's the greatest guy. I love that guy.
Yeah, this great Navy SEAL. He adopts older dogs.
Special Forces, but close enough.
Thanks for ruining my troll. He adopts older dogs. And to me, I'm like, you can walk on water. Like, you're a great human being who's saving lives. And there's this cringe, bro. It's like you are a horrible human being if you have any kind of disdain or look down on people who are trying to live solid moral lives and do the right thing. It is urbanism at its absolute most insidious and despicable.
And I think that's what you see now as the norm among progressives. Look, I'll even tell you as a guy
But you still haven't answered my question.
Sorry.
What would you have told Buck that would have convinced him? Because a Buck 2 years ago would be like, oh, you're exaggerating. That's not true. You blah, blah, blah.
That most of the people that disagree with you on politics also disagree with you fundamentally on what a good human being is and what a good life is and what really matters.
And that would have persuaded
this is not policy. You? I mean, because I think that I would have said that's a little harsh.
Right.
You needed to see for yourself. You needed to see, for example, Kavanaugh on TV, angry, almost choking back tears. His wife, his daughter, they're watching, and blue checks, going either to mock him for this. I mean, they're watching somebody in, intense psychological distress.
He got emotional, so that means he's hysterical and shouldn't be at the Supreme Court. Whereas if he was calm, this guy's a sociopath.
Correct. So there was nothing. So the comparisons that people make to some of the medieval trial by ordeal, and if you sink and you drown, you're guilty, and if you float, you're not guilty, but you're obviously going to sink. So what's the point? Those I think were really apt because there was no way for him to win. I mean, I thought that even Matt Damon's whole, Matt Damon's another guy who, thinks that he should understand policy. I mean, he's an actor who got really lucky, as most actors are.
Well, he wrote the screenplay. You got to give him credit for that. It's not just
him and Ben Affleck.
Yeah, but that's something.
Look, it's an overrated movie. We could talk movies if you want.
It's still an accomplishment. Listen, if someone writes a shitty book, it's still an accomplishment. If someone has a shitty podcast like me, it's still an accomplishment. Yeah. I have two.
Well, the biggest separation in people, I think, is those who say versus those who do.
Yeah.
So
let's give Matt Damon credit.
All right. But when they were making fun of Kavanaugh for that moment where he was defending himself, I don't understand how anybody who is a well-adjusted, decent human being doesn't see what's happening to that guy. And knowing the evidence and hearing the testimony, and this woman who, I literally could not even establish that she had ever even met him or been in the same place. That I think was a moment that, look, for me, it changed everything. But you're asking me, how could I tell old Buck, calm down, it's not that big a deal? Or, no, sorry, the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Tell the old Buck to, get fired up. This is wartime conservatism. We're in a period of wartime conservatism. I think I had to see that.
Wow.
And I had to have prominent journalists on the left reach out to me personally and say, I used to respect you. If you don't stop with this Kavanaugh stuff, this happened. If you don't stop with this Kavanaugh stuff publicly, you're going to destroy your career. You're never going to work in this business again. And I love my parents because
concern trolling.
Sometimes, directly to me, texting me and, sending me DMs. And I love my parents this day. They're just like, man, my mom and my dad both take this position. They're like, don't bend the knee. Just do a job if you have to do a job that's not in media, but don't bend the knee. It's not worth it. Why? Look at there's so many of these people that are so miserable and so their work is feckless. They're just kind of like mercenaries.
Have you read The Fountainhead?
Oh, yeah.
When long time ago in 2000, I love this story. I was a very young man with a regular shaped head and sized head.
Well, you were lucky.
I was lucky.
Yeah.
I had a tiny body, so I don't know. I don't know, whatever. So my great-grandmother had died, and I had promised my grandmother that I would have Thanksgiving dinner with her, right? And I was working at Goldman Sachs at the time, one of the most wretched places on earth, and I was doing help desk, and help desk was 24/7. And I worked the evening shift. And they wanted me to come in that day for lunch. I promised for Thanksgiving lunch, So it'd be 4 to 12. Then I'm back there at 9 in the morning. And I go, I'm not doing this. And they go, well, you find someone to replace you. And I asked, everyone said no. And they said, well, you have to come in. And I go, I promised my grandmother I would have Thanksgiving lunch with her. Now, if I asked her to shift to dinner, she wouldn't have a problem. I wasn't going to do that. And they're like, if you don't come in, you're going to be fired. And I remember, maybe this is my narcissism talking, who knows, but that this is going to be one of those moments you're going to think about for a very long time. That are you going to be Goldman Sachs or grandma? And I go, I'm not coming in. And they fired me. And I am so proud of myself for having done that.
I'm proud just sitting here listening to you tell the story, to be honest with you. I'm not kidding. It's great.
It is why I love that book, which is about the individual. It's not a political book per se. It is sad. So many young people are so willing to fold. You're young. You've got nothing to lose. Like, build that character that will. You were in the service. It carries over for decades.
And it's what, at the end of the day, all the stuff you hear when you're a kid, you roll your eyes, or when you're younger, you have to live with yourself. You have to look in the mirror, all these things. It sounds trite. And then you get older and you realize, like, do I want to be Larry King and have like 8 wives and like the obsession of my life is just achieving certain ratings and certain fame? Does that, maybe he's a really happy guy. I don't know, but I think that you could look at some of the decision making there and have some very obvious questions come up. So look, I think for me, here's a good example. I remember I was at an employer, a media employer, which I don't want to get into the details of it.
Sure.
But I was a media employer, and the owner came, the big boss came to me and was like, look, we got a complaint from a female employee about a tweet that you made. And I was like, I don't even know. I've never even heard of this employee. Why am I
right? Like,
what is? And it wasn't directed at her. It has nothing to do with like what. And she goes, well, she feels triggered by it, by a tweet.
That word.
Yeah. She's triggered by it, and she wants an apology. And I was like, no, that's not happening. And
wait, how could the first thing you say to someone who you've never met is, I'm sorry? That's such a bizarre, nice to meet you, I'm sorry.
Well, this young woman, she was, in her early 20s. I think it was actually her first job. And, she's another one of these programmed leftist psychopaths because, I actually took a very different position on this than other people because my thing was I had other jobs. I'm a single guy, I've got a very supportive family that's like there if I ever need them. And, not financially supportive, but they're very,
sure.
helpful. And I didn't need the job. Right. But she wanted me fired. That was what I thought was so interesting. And that initially it was, but by the way, the tweet wasn't even bad. It wasn't even like vaguely bad. It was not racist. It was not anti-Semitic.
Wait, hold
it
on.
was
I've seen your tweets. They're terrible.
I mean, they're not scary at all. My tweets are amazing. Obviously. That's a whole other thing. We don't have to get into that. But it was not anything that any normal human being would be, and it wasn't directed at her. And she's raising a complaint. I'm like, I'm not even embarrassed by this. I don't even understand what we're having this conversation over. But this little psychopath wanted me fired. I mean, what if, and she doesn't know who I am or anything. What if I had a wife with a kid on the way and 2 in school, and this is my only job. She doesn't know she doesn't know anything about me. And she wants me turned out for my job for a tweet that had nothing, but her claim was that women won't come to work at this company if people like him are in a prominent role. I mean, this is exactly what I was talking about how there's no good faith, there's no decency, there's no morality, there's no sense of, all that really matters is who you are and what you do as a person. All this other stuff, all the virtue signaling and all the like, oh, look at me, I'm going to tweet about this. And, these people are all so full of crap.
Here's another red pill.
Please
go ahead.
No, I want you to red pill. I just wanted to say, but it's kind of like the Kavanaugh thing. I mean, not that it was such a big deal, but I mean, it's just, here's somebody who just doesn't care. If I can light this guy on fire, that makes me feel better. I'll do that. Didn't come to me, didn't talk to me. By the way, did I apologize? Hell no. Did I stay at the company? Nope. I gave them my resignation.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. It was a lot of money on the line, and I did not care. I'm like, I'm out.
If you could make one prediction for 2020, what would it be?
The Democrats, if they hold the House of Representatives, will refuse to certify Donald Trump's reelection victory.
What would that mean?
Nobody knows.
Wow.
Yeah.
Here are 2 big red pills that we haven't mentioned, that I haven't seen really discussed. The reactions to Steve Scalise and Rand Paul, both getting shot and being assaulted. The glee, the never you would think those would be examples of, look how out of control political violence is. It's hitting both sides, blah, 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 blah. That would be a sincere argument to make. Did you see Bette Midler chortling that Rand Paul had his ribs broken by his neighbor?
Yeah. Oh, by the way, it wasn't just Bette Midler.
Oh, of course.
Although that one too. There was Alison Lundgren Grimes, who is I believe the Attorney General for the state of Kentucky.
Yeah, she ran against McConnell.
She thought it was funny too. The people were making jokes about this. The guy, I don't know if you saw the letter that was written by Rand Paul's wife, but she talked about how, they're people understand when you get beaten almost to the point of dying. We see all these movies where everyone's getting punched a million times in the face. You get beaten that way, that stays with you for a very long time.
It's traumatic.
It is
sense of powerlessness,
trauma,
because your brain is thinking, I'm about to die, and all these things start happening.
That's right. So there's a trauma that lingers well beyond just the initial physical injuries.
Yeah, you can handle broken ribs. That's not going to mess you up really for a long time. It's the brain. It's the psychology that's more dangerous.
Right. Well, someone pounding you in front of your own home, and you thinking that your life is over. And on the Steve Scalise thing, it's just amazing the way the media is so. And I go back and forth between whether they do this intentionally or they actually think that they're the good guys. The suppression of information that under any reasonable standard would be something that the public should know. I mean, how many people know that the guy shooting at Rand Paul, who had like the worst year ever for a politician, the guy who did shoot Steve Scalise, had to have terribly, painful surgeries. And the moment you get shot, I mean, I know about this from hearing from the military guys when I was in Iraq and Afghanistan. The moment you get shot in the pelvic girdle, by the way, there's just the bleeding and the nerve. It's a horrible situation. You really don't want to. I mean, you don't get shot anywhere, but you really don't want to get shot in the pelvic girdle area, which is where he got hit. In fact, Iraqi snipers for a while were trained that was because there's no body armor there, and that's a weak spot. And even if you don't kill somebody, they're going to bleed, and they're going to be combat ineffective, and it's going to terrify everybody because you'll hit them in an area where. Anyway, I mean, I won't get into the details, but they were aiming for pelvic girdle. So he gets hit there, and how many people know that the guy was yelling, "This is for healthcare"? I mean, he's literally yelling, "This is for healthcare," when he was shooting. That's according to Rand Paul. People don't even know that. I mean, that he was like a Bernie bro, that's a little bit better known. But you're going to go shoot people because you think that state-sponsored healthcare is a good thing. But, to this I point out that not all rhetoric is the same. I mean, they're telling people if you don't support essentially soon to be nationalized healthcare in this country, which anybody who is intelligent should understand that this is not going to be what they tell you it is. I mean, people can argue as to whether it's like a moral obligation for the state. I mean, I think it's a bad idea. But for that to turn into violence, isn't that surprising when you think that people are told all the time, if you and I don't support nationalized health care, we want old people to die in the street. That is the rhetoric from the top. That's the rhetoric from Pelosi, from Schumer, from the media.
I don't want them dying in the street. I don't want to see it.
Well, I mean, the other thing is people are so funny. They really think. I mean, I think that we need a dramatic, the approach to medicine in this country. I mean, I know this is a little off topic. It's not really my area, but people seem to think if they have access to a doctor, everything's going to be okay. I think the incentive structure for doctors is wrong. I think doctors' training needs to be refocused in a lot of areas that are much more about lifestyle and individual responsibility. There's so many diseases that everyone's dealing with all that. We're always being told about like the genetic anomaly.
What about how corporate America has made Americans so obese?
Well, I mean, of course, dude, the idea that you're supposed to sit at a desk for like, everyone always says 8. It's more like 10 or 11 in a serious job. Okay.
Well, 1 hour for me, but okay.
Right. Yeah. But you know what I mean? But for 10 or 11
plebs,
hours a day. And that this is not normal. This is not what human beings are designed physically, psychologically, or emotionally to do. And I do think that one of the big benefits of the interconnectivity in the web is I think you're finally seeing this break down in a way. Do you know Naval Ravikant? Do you know who this guy is? He's a Silicon Valley guy. He actually did the Rogan podcast a little while ago. And I mean, he talks about this, that we have a history of working in a certain way. And then the Industrial Revolution comes along. And the way we worked was very much in bands, tribes, families, working for whatever the purpose was and assisting each other. But it was very clear. But the Industrial Revolution comes along, and now all of a sudden people are turned into effectively cogs in this machine. And that was good to get us to a place now where we have lights and we're in this like essentially magic box with electricity everywhere around us, in a sense, right? I mean, compared to what it would have been over 100 years ago. But that doesn't mean this is the way it should be forever. I always think it's so funny when people talk about how we need to go back to like the great era of, the Ford plant in the 1950s, where I'm like, are you guys out of your minds? You really want to spend 8 to 10 hours a day? Lucy
like
with the chocolates or whatever. Yeah, but like sitting there just, it's like, we want robots doing these things. Yeah. We don't want human beings doing these things. This is not what we're meant to do. People are meant to interact with each other and be creative and have purpose. They're not supposed to sit there and be like, meh, meh, meh. It's not good.
Let's ask some more red pill questions. Do you agree with me that public schools are literal prisons for children?
No, because I know enough about prisons to know that they're not as bad as prisons.
There are some prisons that aren't as bad as other prisons.
But that is true. I think, the public school system in this country has... The thing is that it reflects, I have friends who teach in elite public schools. I have friends who teach in horrifically failing public schools that, by the way, have plenty of resources.
Of course. Yeah.
Plenty of money, plenty of teachers, plenty of money being spent. And the real, if you're looking for, there should be a movie made somehow. You know how Walter Peck in Ghostbusters, the EPA, they're the bad guys. Ghostbusters is really a story about small business entrepreneurs squaring off against the federal government, and overregulation. There should be a movie about the teachers' unions and how they pretend that everything is about the children when it's actually about overpaying lazy adults and making sure they can't get fired. That's really what teachers' unions are concerned with. Yeah, are concerned with first and foremost.
Did you see my tweet that went wide last week? It was something like, what was it? Every person, without exception, who claims to fight for saving, I fucked it up. They're more concerned with saving public schools than saving public school children.
Oh, well, I have a rule on my show that I say anytime someone is telling you something that's about it's about your safety or it's about your kids, be skeptical. Meaning, like, anytime the government is promising we're going to keep you safe, but let us do this, or we're going to take care of your children, but let us do this, you should always be skeptical, because those are the two are two psychological pressure points that they use to great effect with people that are just trying to get by, pay their bills, do what they got to do. The public school system. I kind of want to do this project because I have a few people here, even in New York City, that I know who have just told me stories that if you pull them together, it would be the best thing you've read on public schools in a very long time. But people are scared because there is a big apparatus behind this, and there's so much propaganda around. The head of the American Teachers, whatever it's called, I forget. Randy something or other.
Randy Weingarten.
Yeah. Teachers just want to teach. Every time anything comes up, it's just teachers just want to teach. All right, well, why is there a 6 to 7-fold increase in the last 10 years or so of administrative staff who don't teach anything? Why are they just being larded onto the system all the time? Why do you have people within the public school system fighting against charter schools when charter schools it's just a different approach to public education. It's still public dollars going to what is effectively controlled by the Department of Education, right? So, and still has the same metrics. I like when you say things and you obviously get conversations going, which is one of the reasons we always have so much fun. When you say it's literally prisons for children, It's a minimum security prison for children. I think we could say that. It's like a white collar prison for kids, for sure.
Well, the other reason why I call it a prison is because I'm not trolling. This is my fundamental belief, and I don't know if you'll agree. Their goal is to break these kids' spirits and remold them in the image of this kind of German factory worker.
Oh yeah, I think they're being trained to fit into the sense of the state. That I mean, and
that's where the prison aspect to me is much more nefarious than like your loss of freedom. They're trying to break and remake you, which is ideally what prison's supposed to do.
You look at the propagandizing that goes on in the public school system. And look, I don't have kids, so this is all for me. I know mostly from the teacher side of it, from teachers who are not even conservative, but just haven't abandoned all faculty in favor of like public school. We just need more money for the public school system.
Do you know what I love? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like when you talk to these people, it's like, do you want me to literally write on the school teacher's paycheck more? It's never how much should they get paid. They should get paid more. Okay, how are you deducing this number? What should their salary be? And they never have an answer. It's always more. Well, you can't write more on a check. You need to have a number. What is your number? How are you coming to this number? Well,
this is also where the government is the only entity you can think of where failure is rewarded with more money and more power every time, right? I mean, we messed this up.
Well,
give
us
more
show.
money. Well, I got to be a friendly guest. But no, I mean, I think that the public here's a part of the public school system that people won't ever discuss or aren't allowed to talk about, and it's every teacher that I have, including very liberal teachers who think that I'm like basically destroying America with my, white male chauvinism, patriarchy, blah, blah, whatever. But I do, I mean, if they're cute enough, I'll talk to them, even if they're crazy like that. If it's an attractive enough female teacher, I'll deal with her annoying politics at the bar for a few minutes. And they all will tell you that you basically know everything you need to know when it comes to the possibility of a kid having a real future on who, if anyone, shows up on Parent-Teacher Day. Oh yeah, and I know that that's like a small snapshot, but they're like no surprises across all the different ethnic backgrounds, across socioeconomic background. The kid who has the mom who's there on time for the Parent-Teacher meeting and is like, I really want little, so and so to succeed, has a shot. Now nothing is guaranteed in life, but has a shot. But, in a class of 30 kids in some of these public schools here in New York City, the 5 kids will have parents. A parent or a guardian show up. Not both parents, a parent or guardian. And so, what are they really supposed to do? And this is why they always want to extend the school day. I think somebody actually in the Democratic field said not long ago they wanted to make it 6 days a week.
Oh, Kamala Harris.
This is just...
and then Senator Bennett said he wanted 10 hours a day.
Yeah, I mean, this is the state getting more time to turn your kids into little statist automatons, and also... It's just a very expensive babysitting program.
Yes.
Yeah. That's what you're really talking. There's no way. I mean, I actually think there should be a radical rethink of how early kids should be going to school. We have it set up for when adults have to be at work.
Right.
But it shouldn't. Kids should sleep longer. Kids should have shorter school day, more compressed into actual learning. Kids don't want to be stuck at desks for 8 hours a day, but it's always based on what the adults want and need, and we pretend it's for the kids. It's all a lie.
Here's some propaganda that I fell for.
I want more red pills. Drop more red pills, Malice.
You're only supposed to take one red pill, not the whole bottle. Some propaganda that I fell for and then realized the truth. I never thought about it much, so I just took it for granted. This idea that homeschooled kids are like weird and like going to be like Kirk Cameron or something. Yeah. Then I met a bunch of homeschooled kids. Do you know how rare it is for me to have a child that I can have a conversation with and enjoy and have reciprocity? It doesn't happen every day. There's very few people I want to talk to. Today it's you. And these homeschool kids I met, they are so put together and articulate and like a head on their shoulders. It blew me away.
I mean, I went to what was considered a very elite Jesuit school here in New York, and it was a scholarship school, and so you had to be a kid who did his homework and was really diligent and better at schoolwork than other kids. I mean, I think people think schoolwork and smart are more closely correlated than they necessarily are, but good at schoolwork. And even that headmaster said, I'm just going to tell you something. It's really, really important that parents, that you have to spend time with your kids. You have to spend for their socialization, for their understanding of authority, and one of the things he said is have dinner with your children every night that you are able to. Every night you can have dinner with your kids. The more, the better. This guy had been an educator for 35 years, but we're always told that these things now, society is telling us, the Kamala Harris approach to this is just like more bureaucrat administrators going through the system. They care about what their pension looks like and how they can, what additional hours they can get doing something else. It's never actually, the incentive structure is not set up for adults to care about the kids at all. So they don't. I mean, some of them do. And then we have these movies about like, oh, this parent who goes into the ghetto and is just spending all of her money on the textbooks they don't have. I got news for you. They've got textbooks.
Yes.
They've got brand new laptop computers, and I've seen it. I used to do, a little virtue signaling. I actually showed up and used to do some after school stuff for inner city kids in DC when I lived there.
It's not virtue signaling if you're actually putting
trying
in the
to help
work.
it. Yeah.
Let me just make that clear. People like conservative. I'm not saying you. Like you see on Twitter, oh, you're virtue signaling. No. If I'm leaving my house and doing something,
that's
it's not
actually
a signal.
virtue.
That's
it's
virtue.
No,
yes.
I agree with you. So I'll give myself a little virtue pat on the back. I remember I used to fill in when a friend of mine couldn't and do some after school stuff in an underperforming public school in Southeast DC, which was 99%, Black and Hispanic. And I would go, and I remember I would sit there and I would teach these kids Ozymandias, and I would, try to go through some And these were kids, by the way, who wanted to stay later, and people would show up and give them more. And so you're dealing with the
self-selecting.
Self-selecting.
Yeah.
But you look around, I mean, you have these movies from like the 80s and the 90s where all the public schools are like the paint's falling off the walls and everyone's carrying switchblades and it's like a Mad Max thing or whatever. No, some of the underperforming public schools look really nice. There's plenty of money going into them, but if kids show up and they haven't been adequately, taught about discipline, they haven't been adequately fed, they haven't gotten enough sleep. I mean, parenting is 70% of it up until 6th, 7th, 8th grade. From all the educators I've talked to, they're like, it's about parents. And no one wants to hear that.
If you could make one prediction for 2020, what would it be?
Trump's going to pull troops out of Afghanistan. Finally, he's going to do it before re-election.
You think that's a smart move for him politically?
I think that he wants to do it, and I think that he realizes if he doesn't, it'll be because the national security apparatus refuses to accept that it's not working.
Are you as hopeful and optimistic as I am about the future of this country?
Yeah, man, we're going to get richer. Things are going to get better. I talk about this on my show sometimes. There was actually a pretty good piece recently about how the last 10 years in the world have been, by every observable metric you could ever pull together, incredible. The world is better now than it has ever been. And actually, one of the more interesting things is how much more greenery there is in the world, which is so funny because people are always so concerned about the environment. In fact, we are getting so much more efficient. This is what the piece was about. I forget who wrote it. We're getting so much more efficient at farming. We're always hearing about clear cutting and all this stuff. No, it's just like fracking. The technology is getting better and better, and efficiency, because people are rewarded for efficiency. They don't have to be told to do it. They want to do it. Farming is getting more efficient. Yield per acre is getting more efficient. So you have less land than ever before being used to feed a population of whatever it is now, 7 billion people, once we've had this population explosion because people aren't all dying in the first 6 months of life anymore. A large percentage of people dying in childbirth. The reality, if you look at the stock market even, and people have all this anxiety. I mean, I'm somebody who looks at this and I say, okay, I mean, guess what? If you've been investing in the stock market for 30, 40 years, you're making money. You're making money. I mean, you might have had a downturn or something, but if you're trying to just be a part of the wealth growth of America, if you're not trying to game, no one can time the market. Everybody knows smart will tell you that. You're getting wealthier, you're getting better. I mean, not everything is getting better, and also you don't live forever. So you're really most concerned with your own little sliver of life. So for example, I'm worried not that America is going to go down the toilet and everything's going to, but that we're going to have a really bad 5 or 10 years. And I don't want to spend my 40s, dealing with a lot of BS and poorer than I should be and less free than I should be. So, the micro matters to us. But yeah, overall, the world's better than it's ever been. There's no question.
One of the things I'm very pleased about is how the agitprop has gotten more explicit and sloppy. And to have Greta Thunberg also be named Person of the Year by Time Magazine, this is something that to me is, if you're anywhere other than this sect, is farcical.
Yeah, of course. I'd be so curious. I wonder if you could get, people of the left now won't talk. I mean, if they know who I am and what I think, and they won't really engage me professionally anymore. They kind of, I guess, know better, or I think it's kind of sad in a sense. I'd be so curious to see if you could get a real, I never see people who believe this stuff and claim to believe it in a way where it should really matter to them. They want to take action on this. Have you seen anybody who's a big Greta Thunberg supporter sit down with a skeptic and actually have a conversation about it? There is no more worthwhile exchange of ideas. These leftists create...
Hold on. Let's assume everything she's saying is true. Let me talk to the scientist who will explain it. Talk to me like a fifth grader instead of the fifth grader. That's the whole point.
Well, of course.
But that's not of course, because she's the one addressing the UN, not someone who's a climatologist who's skilled at breaking down these concepts for the layman.
Right, but the reason for this is that climatologists sitting down talking to you would not be able to answer.
Correct.
Even the expert in this you would ask questions and you would say, okay, explain to me why there's not one repository of data and IPCC predictions that's in one place where everybody can see. We see what the data is ahead of time, and we'll be able to gauge how accurate these things are. Yeah. They'll go, but I have a degree in whatever. First of all, who gets a degree in climatology? Real scientists get degrees in electrical engineering and stuff that actually matters. Climatologists are like, this is like the girls and guys that majored in communications in college, okay? You communicate starting as a baby.
You mean the girls. There's no guys majoring in communications.
I'm trying to be,
but here's the thing. There's like 4 things that are conflated as identical, and they're not all identical. One is David Friedman has this great revelation of what relevance is it that this is man-made, because if the climate is changing very quickly and it's going to cause catastrophe, its origins are not of real more relevance. If a meteor is going to hit the Earth, we didn't build the meteor, we still got to fight the meteor, number one. How certain are you that this climate change is going to happen to a degree that's disastrous? How certain are you that the costs of fighting this climate change long-term in terms of dealing with the damage are less expensive than the cost right now of shutting down all industry? So when you break it down to all the things that they have basically combined, they really don't have much to say other than this is a crisis. I'm like, all right, when you have a crisis, let's do triage. Okay, what can we manage? What are the costs? What are the benefits? And it's very much a mindset, and you see this on the right as well, certain things, where people don't understand trade-offs. That if something has a cost, there might be a benefit, or something has a benefit, there's still going to be a cost. They don't think in these terms.
Well, that's also with the climate change stuff. When you look at the realities of what would have to occur, and people that say, for example, oh my gosh, and you hear this all the time, Trump is terrible. He got us out of the Paris climate agreement. Anyway, I've read through the Paris. I mean, it's mind-numbingly stupid, and it's like a bunch of the most prototypical European bureaucrats kind of all sat around a table and we're like, we will unite together to take care of the problem through a conspiracy of helpful minds. I mean, it's like, what is this? It's garbage. But even if they did all the things that they said they're going to do, it wouldn't change anything. So you sit here and you say, hold on a second, you would need to so dramatically change everything based on, they have to get you super scared. So to get you super scared, they make these predictions that, oh my gosh, this is the AOC model with the Green New Deal. We've got 12 years. We've got 12 years. The chance of us dramatically changing our economies, and by the way, energy is the economy. Sure. People always forget this. We have benefited in this country from, I think, over 90% of all oil wells, oil drills across the country are now involve fracking in some capacity. I mean, we have had an energy revolution, and it's after the internet, it's the single most important, most productive, wealth-creating thing that has happened in this country. And some people might argue it's actually right alongside the internet in some ways. I mean, it's just been a revolution, and also obviously means that we're not talking about peak oil anymore. But these things happen. No one pays attention to them. Instead, they talk about how the world's going to end in 12 years. There's no way we could transform our economies so that it would even stop this 12-year doomsday clock from happening. So what are we even talking about if that's the case? Which then exposes that they're clearly using hyperbole, exaggeration, and outright lies. And then even beyond that, I mean, you sit down with a reasonable person, you say, so you're telling me unless all the governments of the world, because it's not just America, we're like 15% of global emissions or something like that, unless all the governments of the world come together, the human race is going to go extinct soon. I mean, soonish. I mean, in a matter of decades.
Many other species.
And every other species. I mean, there'll be probably some things that are living. And you look at them and you say, you think that's a rational belief? And they say yes. They believe this. This is why when I start to say things like liberals are crazy, which I've begun to, I mean, I do think that this crosses over the hysteria does cross over into what you would consider a mass delusion or a form of mental illness. I mean, I do think that liberals.
It's a fundamentalist faith. It's not a delusion.
I think that liberals have actually, some of them have gone crazy to the point where they cannot be reasoned with anymore. I think this is much more common than people.
You can't reason with someone who's a fundamentalist.
I mean, I guess it depends on what kind of fundamentalist.
Well, no, it's a fundamentalist faith. Okay, we are out of time.
We're just getting started. You didn't even ask me about what it's like dating chicks in New York these days.
What would you know about that, Sasquatch?
Not very much. I was hoping.
What's Morticia like in real life?
I was hoping you were going to give me some tips. Tell me where I got to go hang out around.
Oh God, they'll get me started on this. I'm so SOL. It's not even funny. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
I mean, it's fun to talk to somebody who actually wants to talk about things instead of wants to tell the audience that they have memorized a slew of things that they think their audience will want them to hear. You're one of the very few people that I can talk, which is why I drag my ass all the way over into I don't even know are we in Queens? I don't even know where we are. This is I never come down here. I've lived in New York for over 30 years.
Basic.
Because, I'm basic for sure. I'm sitting here drinking Starbucks out of one of your fancy mugs. It's not pumpkin spice though, but the
podcastmerch.com.
That's right. The reality for me, man, is there are very few people who want to have a conversation and challenge. And I mean, you agree where I think where, you're willing to agree with me where you do, and you're willing to tell me where you push back, but you also are willing to hear. Once you do the pushback thing, it's not go to commercial. You're not I disagree with you on that. And that's all the time. And that is the nature of people right now in media always want to see their side win.
Yeah.
They don't want to see, because there's back and forth. I mean, we talked about the CNN thing. Does the audience, are they in on the game or do they actually believe it? I mean, you convinced me a little bit that it's more they actually believe it. I'm starting to think it's more than the game, but I don't think anyone really necessarily knows. So that's what I like. You're a thoughtful fellow, and you make fun of my giant head. So.
You are welcome.